Hello everyone and welcome to this edition of Business Africa. Coming up, as the world marked the International Day of Remittances to families, service providers want to be declared essential as COVID-19 batters the flows. And the rest ahead, the World Trade Organization, Benin, drops its candidate and now supports the Nigerian Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. Also, the 2,500 nuclear program South Africa hopes will reduce load shedding. Remittance service providers should be classified as essential in times of crisis. This was the International Fund for Agricultural Development's plea to governments around the world as International Day for Remittances to Families was marked on June 16th. But there has been a slowdown in remittances due to the coronavirus pandemic this year. Yet in 2019, the UN reported remittances surpassed foreign direct investment as the main source of capital inflows to developing countries. Details with William Bayeha and Eric Oteng.
Every June 16, the world observes the International Day of Family Remittances. This year's celebration takes place under rather special conditions due to the impact of COVID-19 around the world. Millions of migrant workers have lost their jobs, and many families dependent on their financial support will be greatly affected. The direct consequences, a sudden increase in poverty throughout the world, and according to the NAO, achieving sustainable development goals under these economic conditions in developing countries seems even more difficult. The coronavirus pandemic has disrupted an entire system, directly affecting 200 million migrant workers worldwide, half of whom are women. On March 19, the UN Secretary General called for a global solidarity in response to the coronavirus crisis, stating that remittances are a means of survival in the developing world, now more than ever. International remittances to these countries are therefore expected to fall by $110 billion in 2020, and it will take many years before they return to previous levels, the organization noted. The day highlights the contribution to improving the lives of 800 million family members around the world. Half of these monies go to rural areas, where issues of poverty and hunger continue to be of concern.
More on the impact COVID-19 is having on remittances. We speak with Michael Kent, co-founder and CEO of Azimo, an instant payment company based in London. Hello, Mr. Kent. Very pleased to have you with us.
Morning.
How do you think the decline in remittances will affect the economies of the countries of origin concerned?
I think it's a great question. Nobody's quite sure how big the decline in remittances are going to be. But I think with everything that's happening with the COVID-19 pandemic across the world, it's no doubt that you're going to see a decline in remittances. And if you look at the story, the very human stories that sit behind people sending money home to their family and friends in emerging markets, these monies are kept for things like education, things like groceries, things like healthcare, really critical needs. So I think any decline in remittances is going to be very bad for individuals, very bad for the people. And then it's quite bad for the economic story of those countries. Some of the emerging markets in sub-Saharan Africa, as much as 20 or 30% of their GDP is coming from remittances from overseas. So a decline in that fall of funds is a big worry.
What measures could be put in place to cushion the effects of the pandemic suffered by these providers?
Well, sure. It's a great question. I think the first thing is that, because of the lockdown situation, we're encouraging people to use new ways of sending money. So where traditionally people might have gone to a Western Union or MoneyGram store, we're encouraging them to use their smartphone, either their Android or their Apple phone, download an app, Asmo is a good example, and start sending money digitally. So that I think the digital move to digital for remittances is very important. I think governments have a big part to play here. They are already supporting millions and millions of jobs, particularly in Europe and the United States. And I think that government support will have to continue for a good while yet to make sure that people remain in their jobs and still have money to send. I think the third thing that governments can do is just make sure that they are as open as possible to technology and new ways of sending money. In many countries in sub-Saharan Africa, you have Western Union and MoneyGram are the only companies that really service those parts of the world. And I think opening up the markets to competition and insisting that the banks in Africa work with as many participants as possible means that prices come down. And I think prices coming down is very important.
What sustainable development plans can governments, the private sector, and even civil society organizations adopt to support these flows?
Okay, I think the number one thing we have to do is change the conversation on migration. We need to remember that people migrate because they are looking to make a better life for themselves, and they are often the most adventurous and the most entrepreneurial people from their generation. So I think encouraging the brightest and the best to come to different countries around the world is something that we should all be doing as we seek to rebuild after the pandemic. I think we also need to recognize just how hard these people work, and also how important the flow of money in terms of remittances is. We've talked about the huge impact that they make on GDP, but they make a very, very big impact on individuals' lives. So I think we just need to change the rhetoric and change the way that we talk about migrants and the way that we talk about remittances, and just recognize how good migration is and how good remittances can be to support it.
Thank you, Michael Kent. That is the co-founder and CEO of Azimo, an instant payment company.
That's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
After Benin's withdrawal from the race to head World Trade Organization, only 3 African candidates are left to run for the post. Details right after the break.